So in this video I'm going to try to talk to you and show you around my course just a little bit, just to give you a taste of a few things. I think the most important thing to me about my online classes is sort of how I design them and the thinking that goes behind that, and what the students can, or what the students are interacting with, what they're flowing through. And so I'm going to, so that'll probably be the centerpiece of what I'm about to show you, and then I'm going to point out a few other just little things. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the news feed. So go ahead and log in here to CourseDen, which is what we call it at UWG. So the news feed, excuse me, is it's a tool that learning management systems have had for, I think all the learning management systems I've seen have had this feature. I just think that it's important that one uses it. It's a great place to post updates that are happening in the course or maybe at the university. I feel like by posting here regularly, like at least once a week, that you give the course a little bit of a pulse. I realize that these kinds of learning management systems don't necessarily have the same kind of feel as a Facebook page or other social media that a lot of our students are familiar with. But you don't want it to feel like every time they come in there that it's just like an empty room and they can't tell if other people are there or if there's been any changes at all. Everything's just the same all the time. So if you can use your news feed to kind of keep something fresh in the class so that students know you've been there and that you're paying attention and that you're watching and that you're listening, I feel like it pulls them in more. Because in a lot of online courses, a student could probably get away with just coming in every 2 weeks or every 10 days or something and just putting in, a good 10-hour or 15-hour day of work and get her done kind of thing. But I think it's better if you kind of try to pull them in and you show them that this is a place that they, might have a little curiosity about. Oh, I want to see what's going on in there. I just want to see if there's anything posted. I think it's also a good place for the instructor to possibly show some humor. You don't have to always be so official. And these examples here that I've got here, these are pretty official and serious things about grading. This is at the end of the course. But you can also use humor or try to catch their eye, or use personality. Maybe post things related to scholarship opportunities. I see it as a more informal area as well. So I just think it's a great tool to use. I just clicked on the news feed so that I could actually access all of the items in here. And so you can embed videos, of course. You can upload things. You can give them passwords to various things that are difficult to access. Like when I gave them the Galileo password, which is no longer current, so I don't think it's harmful to put this on the web. I went and found a photograph of an athlete to try to catch their eye. I was trying to train them early in the semester to look at the news feed, that it was something that that they needed to be checking regularly. I also use a news feed in the very beginning of the semester to try to pull them in. So I put a big video of myself trying to clearly tell them what they need to do when they first start that course, especially because DTOL was new to us. A lot of them wouldn't have known exactly what to do. I mean, they probably would have punched some buttons and figured out the content tab had some modules in it and things like that, and they would have figured it out. But I also felt like it was kind of polite to go ahead and try to explain it to them and show them how to get around. So I made some videos and tried to lure them in. So the newsfeed is just a great, obvious kind of thing that you should I feel like you should use to catch students' attention, direct them places, inform them. You show your personality through it. You hopefully give the class a little bit of a pulse, a faint pulse. Obviously there's other things you have to do to give your class a pulse. So now let's move on to the next item. Let's talk about the content button. So this is the big button in D2L where you find all your sort of lessons or your units or your modules. And I use the word module and session interchangeably, although I prefer the word session because it is less sort of cold. It maybe suggests more of a classroom kind of environment to me than the word module. So I paused you for a second and I went back out, and I'm now in student view, and I hit the content tab, and this is what you see. So you see all these modules here, these sessions. I've got session 1, session 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I have 7 sort of units of experiences that the students go through during the course of the semester in this example. In my course design, I value consistency and predictability and routine and balance. I feel like it's just something that I owe the students so that they can get in and they can grapple with the more challenging cognitive tasks that we, design for them in our assignments and our discussion boards, projects, things like that. My job is not to entertain them with some wild course design where they never know where to find anything. So I feel like this is one area in my life actually where I like to be super predictable, super organized, super routine. It's just, I think it's something we owe the students. So just a quick example, you see how in this first session we've got the first section is called Introduction, and an introduction in my class always has a welcome video and a session checklist, and these two items generally reflect one another. Sort of the video is my talking head, face-to-face kind of more lively version of what do you have to do in this module, and the session checklist tells them in sort of very painful detail what they need to do. I mean, I think for some of them sometimes I get a little too detailed, but and it tells them item by item. I list every single item. Everything you see in the actual module is mentioned in the checklist in order. It's explained in verbiage. Why are you doing this? How do you do this? Watch out for this. Beware of that. Little tips and tricks, but it's all sort of meticulously laid out in that checklist, and it's sort of loosely explained in the welcome, in the orientation, in the opening video, should I say. And then I arranged the materials by, I sort of arrange them by topic rather than by resource. I talk about that in the verbiage below this video. Topical arrangement means that if you're having the students make something called a teacher welcome video, for example, then that is its own, has a heading related to that topic, and then everything that they need is located within that piece of the module. So what do I mean by that? Well, why do I do that? Well, because one of the things I try to train the students to do, because the online environment can be very overwhelming. As we click through this, you're going to see all these words everywhere, and you're probably looking at this like, what is this? I can't quite grasp. I mean, you may not be suffering from that, but I know that when I come up to a list like this, I just kind of reel for a second, like, what is this? So one thing I train my students to do is to sort of protect themselves from that information overload and to close everything that's not related to what they're working on. I feel like that's something that's actually a strength of the online environment if you can just figure that out. It's kind of obvious maybe, but I think sometimes students don't realize, ooh, I could just click a few things and close everything and then focus. And so I feel like by arranging topically, you allow them to focus. But if instead I do what a lot of online instructors seem to do, and I've taken more than 20 online graduate classes across several institutions, and so I've seen this plenty. What they'll do is when they're designing a module, they'll put maybe the teacher welcome video plan. These are assignment instructions. They might have something called a section in the module called instructions, and so everything that's instructions for the various, maybe there's 3 tasks to perform in the module, maybe there's 2 projects and a discussion, they might put all their instructions under an instructions heading, and then they might have 2 or 3 discussion boards, and they have a heading called discussions, and then they put these 3, they mix them up, so there's mixed topics under the discussion, and that's because they're taking that resource approach, which is very easy for, well, it's not easy because I think online design takes a long time, but instructor designers, I think that sometimes they don't realize what it's like to move through the online environment, and we students need our stuff together. And so that's why I prefer to do this sort of topical or thematic kind of organization. And I know it's a little thing, but for the students, it's a little thing, to me, I'm one instructor, but in a class of 80 students, think how big that could be for students. You've got 80 students who, with that one little organizational design consideration, I think that they benefit from it. So it's like you have to, I guess you need to think like a student. How are they going to be working in this environment? How do I make it easy for them to find what they need to actually learn? Because it creates so much noise, frustration, and such an obstacle. If you're making them, you're actually forcing them to perform the role of the learning management system and the designer by forcing them to go out and find everything and pull it together. I really don't feel like that's their job. I feel like that's our job as the teacher designers. So I know I'm getting all excited about this, but I kind of get obsessive about just very tidy design. I'll say one more thing, and then we're going to go check out a document called the course plan, which is my best friend as the teacher of the course. I put one of my rules that I design by is that everything the students need is in the modules. So everything that they need in this session here, this is a 2-week session, is here. So they don't have to go out to this discussions button. They don't have to go to the Dropbox separately. They don't have to go out to quizzes. Everything they need is here, because I feel like encouraging them to immerse themselves in the context that you've built, in the sort of learning ecosystem that you've built, that's the way the material should be presented. Everything again should be there, for them. However, even though I design that way so that they have it all there, they can certainly go out to these other spots. It's just occasionally when the students just hop straight over to Dropbox without understanding the context within that module, they do get a little confused. But I just urge them back to the module usually. But just wanted to point that out, that that's also part of the design thing. I don't feel like students should have to go locate things here. I feel like you should design a nice module with everything that they need here. We're going to hop over to look at the course plan, which is just the overview document that explains how these sessions span across the semester. I'll go ahead and grab it out of the first session. And then I will undock it so we can actually look at it a little bit better. Okay, so the course plan is the document that I often refer to when students have questions for me. If they ask me when something's due, I try to send them back to this. This is my guide in how I sort of administer my administrative guide to how the semester should run, and sort of scheduling kind of issues, and lets me know when I need to be grading things, and it lets them know some important things to them. I feel like this document is the sort of bird's eye view of the class. That is, what session are we in? What is the date that the session, the dates the session runs? What is due? So these are the assignments here. And when are these things due? So pretty much everything's due on Sundays at midnight. There are a few more particular rules about discussions, because they have to make multiple posts. So the first post is usually due by the second Thursday of the module, so that they have at least a 4-day window where they can be interacting with people. So there's a few rules like that where things have additional deadlines, but so I try to be consistent. This is getting back to that consistency and predictability, and everything's the same. Also, you'll notice that each of these modules has a sort of a balanced amount of work. I do that because when I first started teaching at the university, I found that I would sort of overload them at the end, partly due to poor planning probably, and I think they get overloaded at the end in other classes too, and sometimes that's necessary because they're not ready for big culminating projects till the end, and that's just the way it goes, and that makes sense that the end would be difficult. But in my class, the material is such that I'm able to balance it out pretty well, and I also am able to, for example, they have a final portfolio due at the end, but they actually work on that throughout the whole semester. So they start building that here in session 2, and then they continue working on that portfolio throughout. And that's one way that I've balanced it out, so that's not some huge project at the end. It's just something they kind of put the lid on, and they do some final reflections about where they're going from here. But so I think balancing assignments is important. In my class, just due to the nature of the content and the course objectives, it makes sense for me to sort of have a mixture in each module of one or two discussions, one or two readings, and usually some kind of technology related project that also achieves some other intellectual goal. Um, so we don't just do technology, but there's always a couple layers there. Like when they do their BYOT podcast in session 3, I want them to learn how to make and publish an audio recording in some form or fashion. That's the technological piece, but then they also are learning, they have to go do research using Galileo databases, for example, and other online materials to learn about this sort of new phenomenon in Georgia schools. So there's always multiple purposes to those technology projects. What else? So down here at the bottom, I give them a record of changes because I think it's okay to, have these fabulous plans that you lay out in the beginning of the semester, and then you might have to tweak things because I always give them too much work. I always think, oh, they can do this. They're so capable of doing all this work that I've given them, and they'll learn so much and they'll love it. But then I realize that when I implement that I've got them overloaded. And so you'll see a few things slashed out in this semester because I had overloaded them. And I figure that out through feedback in my anonymous board and through conversations with students about how long things are taking them and the kinds of frustrations they're having. So I like the course plan is online and it's dynamic. It can change, and down here they can learn what changed when, what it was, what it is now, why, and how that affects their grade. And I do think you should respect their need, even though we teachers don't want them to even think about grades. At a very basic level, grades are super important to students. It's one thing that's super important to a lot of them. Learning is also super important. Maybe not all of them, but some of them, or a lot of them, hopefully. But grades are important to pretty much all of them. And we force that on them, We will punish them if they don't pay attention to their grades. So we need to respect that need. And so I feel like this document, for me, it has everything. It has the grades for it has the points values. Let me put it that way. For everything. So they know this is exactly how much this assignment's worth. I feel like we should be totally transparent about that and not force them to go pull all that together either. And obviously the grade book inside of a learning management system can help manage some of that as well, but I think it's important in this big picture document to also provide that. I'd mentioned checklists earlier, so each session has a checklist, and you can actually access them here as well. If you want to use this document, you notice it has lots of links on it, and that's just to give another route to accessing things. But like I said earlier, everything is actually inside the modules. I don't ever expect people to click on these links. They're just there as an extra way to navigate. Once you kind of get the hang of things, you'll realize it's sort of an easy sort of perk to the way I've designed it. I'm nearing 20 minutes here, and I can tell I'm just getting long-winded, and I'm sure this is, so fascinating. Let me just quickly say, let's look at, I'm going to open up a couple sessions here next to each other, just to show you. So again, consistency, predictability, thematic organization or topical organization of materials inside the content module, and I just wanted to show you. I've got two modules open, and see I've got introduction, and then I've got these sort of topical things. And then for this semester, for the Voices from the Field discussion, that was an ongoing discussion, basically where students listen to practitioners in the field talking about technology use and the challenges related to that. That was a new thing, and it was just a really short discussion, but you notice that's always the last thing in the module. I just try to give them sort of predictability. So just want to point that out. The last thing I want to say is going to be super brief, and that's related to the first discussion of the semester. I'm going to try to go in there and show you without showing you student names. So I'm going to pause you for a second and arrange that. Okay, so the last thing I do is in the introductory discussion board, not only do students show me they know how to post in the discussion board, and most of them know how to do that, but there's probably a small percentage that still would struggle with that in the very beginning. So it's a good activity just to get students doing something with the tools. It also is a place where I have students, give me their phone number and that kind of thing. But I also just want to start kind of getting to know them, getting them to write, but I don't put any sort of pressure, any academic pressures. It's just, who are you, and tell me a few things about yourself. I couldn't show you the I couldn't show you the discussion board because I can't figure out a way to show you without showing students' names. But here I'm responding to a student named Rebecca, and she was a military brat, as she described herself. And all I do is I go in, I try to say something in response to what the students have said. So I just try to say hi. I comment about something related to what they've said. Sometimes it's hard because they are pretty taciturn in a few cases, but when they give me something to respond to, I try to relate to them somehow, and I find that it pulls me in too. It excites me about the semester that is about to begin, and so even though it takes some time, and I probably hem and haw a little bit when I approach the task every semester at the beginning, I kind of get into the flow of it, and it's pretty rewarding because it helps me to remember my students, and that's a terrible thing to say, but I think it's easy in the online environment for a teacher to forget their students. That's like one of the dangers of teaching this environment. So you have to work really hard to make sure that you know them. So that's why you should allow, as for me, I feel like I should allow text messaging. I should have my Skype open all the time, have my Blackboard IM open, just anything that we can use to sort of connect to them. But this is the thing, this is my icebreaker. I know a lot of teachers probably have other things they do. They probably do live sessions and all that kind of stuff. But for me, this is an important just first step, and it serves a couple different purposes. All right, so I've talked way too long. You probably get it. So I'm going to shut this down for now. And I guess if you want access to my course, you could send me an email, khuett@westga.edu. It's also on my abbreviated CV, and I can probably figure out a way to get you access to my course if you wanted to poke around a little more. All right, thanks.